Okay, I hope we can all get back soon. Okay, hi everybody. I think everyone's back and ready to go. All right, so now we're going to start module 2, which we're going to introduce some of the issues about essentially. Let's go back to my notes here. Hang on. Yeah, we're going to now talk about in the first, let's just say this, in class number 2, we talked about corruption as a transactional problem. In class 3, we talked about corruption as sort of an agency problem, an organization problem. And now we're going to step outside the agency and we're going to look at corruption as a societal problem. And for this, I wanted to go back to the concept of principal and agent. And I have not emphasized this very much. And one of the reasons I didn't emphasize it is that in class 3, I didn't feel really applied. And could someone explain to me why in class 3, principal agency doesn't apply? And also at the same time, if someone can just try to summarize for me, what is principal and agent perhaps as described by this this visual that I put up?
Sir, we can see a different paper.
What are you seeing?
Not,
Am I
not
not?
the PowerPoint.
You're
Class
not the power.
7,
Oh, you're
October
looking at
19.
oh boy.
Yeah.
So I am sharing the wrong thing. How does that happen? My God, these things are more complicated than I ever thought. Hang on. Well, let's see. How can I do this? I will shrink. Hang on. Maybe I can do it. Maybe it'll be better if I can. Okay. My gosh. Sorry, guys. Just bear with me a minute. I'm going to stop. Well, no, I don't want to share. I want to try to get the slides over, but I'm having trouble doing that. Jeez. All right, I'm going to stop my PowerPoint and then, okay, wait a second. I think I may have figured it out. Okay, now you can see the slides, right? Can you see some slides now? Yes? Okay. So as you see here, it says another past concept, and we have corruption as a principal agent problem. Everyone sees that? Give me a thumbs up. Okay. Someone explain to me why I didn't emphasize this so much in the last class, but perhaps I want to do now. Maybe one way of thinking about it would be in a government agency. Now, it's a different word, it does say principal agent. But I'm using, okay, let's just say at a department, at one of the departments in the Philippine government. We can imagine principal agent being a problem in what circumstance, and when can we imagine it not being necessarily the most important thing in another circumstance? Am I getting across this point? Because I want to take a shot at why principal agent matters less in certain times and more in others? Okay, maybe I'm not making myself as clear as I could, so I'm gonna I'm gonna do it myself. Last time we contemplated a corrupt agency, an agency that basically had a system set up where money is being collected by various rank and file and being shared and passed around. There's no principal agent problem there at all because they're doing exactly what they're supposed to do. It's not a situation of some rogue bureaucrat collecting money behind the backs of his superiors. That would be a classical principal agent problem. But in an organization where corruption is part of the game, well, the agency rules have changed. Agents are supposed to collect bribes. So start thinking about this as, oh, corruption is nothing but a principal agent problem, and we have these bad agents and these poor principals who just can't control their agents. That's probably not true. And I'm going to emphasize that a lot in the coming slides. Okay, so this principal agent problem, everyone I believe everyone is comfortable with it. It's also a legal concept. It's basically, what are the incentives for the agent to do the right things for the principal? That might mean in America, that means tipping. The agent is the waitress, and the agent gets tipped when she does, or he or she does, a great job. That is a system where the restaurant has basically figured out a way to make sure that they perform, as opposed to having cameras watching everybody, watching how fast food is being brought back and forth. So there, they have basically imposed the job of monitoring the performance of the agent onto the customers. That's what a tip is all about. Okay, so let's move on to the next slide if I can handle it. There we go. So I wish I could have sort of shared this as I was talking, but this is one of the slides from the first week. Remember, in the center is the corrupt transaction. Around that is the organization. And around that is the political economy where the organization is located. And that's what we're going to talk about. I said, where are we now? We're in this orange area. Next week or next month, we'll do countervailing policies and initiatives. Right now, we're going to be talking about the political economy. Okay. All right. Does anyone agree with this? It's a little challenge. I used to say this when I was a dad. I kind of think about it less now. I think it's very simplistic, but why would I put something up like this other than to try to shock you? This was my when I was like having my 3-year-old do things, and he was relatively well behaved, and I'd walk up against or come against people where the kids are really badly behaved, and you don't say bad kids. I didn't say that. I said, well, the bad parents, because what happens is the kids train the parents, right? They learn how to train you just as much as you're training them. So why am I bringing this up? Okay, no one's willing to take a shot at that. Okay, I'm going to basically say that for purposes of my thinking today, my feeling is there are no such things as bad agents. It's all about the principle. I believe that truly is, because these days with monitoring, with computers, anyone can adequately monitor. Monitoring is so much easier than it used to be. And yes, you could have situations where maybe the employment law makes it hard to discipline an employee. We've all seen that at times. Most of the time, employment law does a very good thing in making the workplace fairer, safer, but sometimes people take advantage of that. And sometimes, so as a result, it's hard to necessarily police your agents as much as you can, and you get sub-performance. But, you know, these days they're counting everything. They're looking how fast you do certain things. People work at home now. You know, can you imagine 15 years ago, people working at home? Impossible. But now employers, because they have better methods of monitoring their agents, are allowing for people to work at home. And again, that's harder for monitoring, but people are making these trade-offs. So what I'm saying here is a lot of it has to do with principles. And so if you can see here, I have 3 possible determinants of effectiveness of principles. So you can see that in the top spot there. We have breadth, complexity, and subjectivity of the thing you're working with. Then you have the capacity of the principle, and then you have the incentives. All right, so taking these 3 concepts, let's go from left to right. Oops, hang on. Can someone, and I think it's really illustrative to compare private sector principal agency with public sector principal and agency, especially when we get to democracies. So someone tell me, what in a small business, what is the likelihood of breadth, complexity? Wait a second. Before I do that, I actually have a table and I'm going to make it a lot easier. So what I have here, about 5 boxes. In one, I posit a small business owner. He has employees as agents. The next one is a publicly traded company, much more complex, shareholders, board, senior management, mid-level management, employees. Below that, we have government with the ministers, and or in Philippines case, the SEX and the USEX. Let's see, and then in democracies, essentially we have voters and we have elected officials. Okay, so everyone gets the idea that a voter is a principal, an elected official is an agent. Okay, we all get that. Now we're going to start thinking about it. Next slide. So here is a little bit of joint work. Let's what is a small, we have a small biz owner. The possible agent is a talk or non-mute. Somebody?
The employees, sir.
Right, the people working for the small company. Would you say that the breadth, complexity of, say, a coffee shop or let's say a food truck, not too complex, right? Okay, so, and then the capacity of the principal to oversee, he's probably there, and say in our food truck exercise, he can watch it, he can see this happening. Maybe he has 3 food trucks and he goes around and he has a motorcycle, and that makes it a lot easier for him to check out the different ones in his barrio or his barangay. And then incentives there or not? I'd say there's huge incentives. Absolutely. There's it's his profits are to make sure he's going to make profit if his people are doing a good job, not stealing from him or her, and basically producing and not poisoning people with bad food. Those are the kinds of things that turns a food truck business into a success. So what I did here, because I'm very low tech, I created another slide and I just put the answers in. Breadth, complexity, probably manageable. Capacity, pretty good. And incentives are definitely strong. It's profits. Profits, I have to say, people talk about profits being a bad thing, but profits create good incentives for people to perform. Okay, shareholder in a publicly traded company. Do it. What is the immediate agent for shareholders? This is where you got to think about your the structures of companies like Banco de Oro or San Miguel. What's at the top after the shareholders? I can't hear anyone. Unmute if you want to talk.
Board of directors?
Right, the board. So we got the board as the possible agent. That's who the shareholders basically punish by voting them out if they don't do a good job, theoretically. I think it doesn't happen as much as we'd like to. How about breadth, complexity, subjectivity?
The board of directors act on their own. They have freedom to act, to run the business, actually. So the
Yes.
shareholders have no really um uh, have no really then only finds the result, but the actual operation of the corporation, they don't have anything. They have not much knowledge of.
I
Is
agree.
that right,
Though,
sir?
yeah, I appreciate that point. What I really wanted to say is certainly the breadth, complexity, and subjectivity of performance of a major corporation is a lot harder to understand than
Mhm.
necessarily a food truck, right? So,
Yes.
the shareholder, what's really nice is that there's sometimes you have a share price, right? A share price can, people getting upset because the price of it going down. And that's a
Yeah.
good indication that something is going wrong. The market
Mhm.
is giving us information to tell us about the
Mhm.
performance of the company. That's a beautiful thing. But then the board will say, "Oh, you don't understand. We've had a really bad year, and don't sell. It's wrong. We're undervalued. Blah blah blah." So that's where the subjectivity comes in, the complexity. Then there's the capacity of shareholders. Most likely shareholders are people who have excess capital, who have a little bit of money, so they probably have some success. Maybe they're trust babies and they've gotten money from their parents and they don't care as much, or they're not very smart. But, a lot of shareholders are probably people who are relatively savvy with money. They're moving beyond the safe investment of a bank. And granted, people get into buying shares, especially when prices are going way up. And everyone gets greedy and they come in and then they get burned. Maybe they'll learn that time. So I'd say the capacity is not bad, but there's a lot of shareholder kind of things that help. There's various financial analysts. There's all these people who can give shareholders ideas and give them some help. And even sometimes there are groups like pension funds that actually police these things. A pension fund might hold a bunch of shares, and they're the ones who are thinking hard about it, much more than a small shareholder. And then the incentives, I'd say the incentives are pretty good. Maybe not as strong as the food truck guy, because you have a portfolio. Maybe you have like 15 different companies. You can't watch them all. So if one goes down, you don't feel as bad. All your chips are not in one. So you can see here, as I tried to do, board of directors, high, good with some assistance, and somewhat strong incentives. Okay. Now let's now leap to the department heads of a particular agency. Who are I think we already made this clear. The department heads, they have, like, say, the line officials, the ones who are maybe meeting with the public or doing the stuff that needs to get done. Those are the agents. And as I was saying, breadth or complexity, well, some of the things can be very complicated, like, say, a tax collection. Every taxpayer is different. That's really tough. But what if it's something like, oh, well, let's pave a road. Let's be Department of Public Works, or let's do a relatively simple procurement, and let's have a team that does the procurement. That's kind of what the line agency people do. So it can be different for different people, but you can see there's some how should I say? There's definitely differences, but it's probably somewhere below shareholders. And then capacity. I think as I was saying, these days, if people want to monitor, they can. If they want to monitor these days, they can do a much better job at it than they could 10 years ago. And then the last one, incentives. What do people think here? Is this a good score or a bad score? There's no profit. There is no profit incentive for the most part. Government officials are just not motivated. They're motivated by many things, but profits, at least official profits, is not one of them. So as you can see here, as I reveal, line staff, complexity can be high, say with, maybe a land transfer office or something like taxes, tax collection. Capacity, probably good nowadays with more computers. But here's the thing, incentives can be poor or negative. That's, again, if we have a corrupt organization, there are perhaps negative incentives for doing the thing that we want them to do. All right, that leaves the voter. And that's where we're now going to talk, because this is really where the rubber hits the road. This is really the true challenge in our society right now. Okay. How effective are voters as principals? That is the real issue here. I gave you a bunch of things to read, and the things that were brought up one way or another was this concept of public choice theory, collective action problems, and this may be harder to have picked up, but media manipulation or / oversaturation. So if you look here at this slide, we have something from 1999. That is an article from 1999 about voter ignorance. And unfortunately, as you see in America we have our friend Donald Trump and the MAGA thing that's going on, Make America Great Again. I bet you some of you have seen some of that, or at least maybe some of your relatives in America have talked to you about that. It's not great. So, and then in your own, you have your own. Philippine politics has its own source of issues like this as well. We're not, let's America and the Philippines, we share a lot. We have a lot in common. So let's see where this goes. Okay. Does anyone know who played the Batman? I want to hear. I can't hear you, Hannah. What's that?
Robert Pattinson.
Robert
Pattinson,
Pattinson.
yeah.
Hannah, are you a big fan of Robert Pattinson?
So-so.
So.
Not
My
so
wife,
much.
when after we got married, somehow or other, my wife fell in love with Robert Pattinson. It really was amazing. She wanted to name our son Edward because there was that movie about the vampire, and Edward was so gorgeous and so, well read and could play the piano, and he was so cute, and he had this nice girlfriend. Well, since then, what's happened? He's broken up with the nice girlfriend, and now he's playing all these dour characters, and this one is the Batman. So you got a little video here that talked about public choice and collective and maybe some collective action, but can somebody help me try to understand what public choice theory is before I go to the next slide? I can go like this really quickly, but I don't, what can someone try to disentangle that video? And what was the main message of that video? I'm okay. There are simpler videos out there that could have been used, but I wanted to sort of what I liked about it was it tried to use a real circumstance, and it was Gotham City, this corrupt town that Batman was trying to fix by, being a vigilante. We know about vigilante, that there was some vigilanteism in the Philippines for a while. What was the idea that he was trying to get at? Can someone try to understand very easily for me, or very simply, what is public choice theory? What is the general feeling behind, or the general assumption behind public choice theory? Let's hear from Maria.
Sir, who you vote is what you get.
What you vote for is what you get. That is not actually bad at all. And it's funny, you may have predicted a slide that I have in this. But let's try to move a little bit beyond that. I know what you vote for is what you get. But can someone elaborate on that a little bit more? Let's get back to incentives. Okay. Remember, everything is about incentives, and we'd like to think that our government officials like to make speeches where they care about the greater good. But Maria, you're going to say something. You're waving your hand.
Yes, I remember a statement in the video that the voters vote by their pocketbooks.
Yes, that is a very, very important thing. So the general idea is that rather than thinking about the greater good, unfortunately, or the long-term good, and that's also unfortunate, all parties inside a political economy are doing things in a self-interested way and making self-interested choices. I even, when I'm saying this, it sort of breaks my heart. It makes me feel that, I would like to think that people go into politics for the greater good, and there are some who do, but, then they get corrupted. And there's still some, like Joe Biden, for instance. He's really old. He's our president. He's the U.S. president right now. For the most part, he's trying to do the right thing. He's the exact opposite of Trump. As you can see here, I have Malacañang Palace. I'm not necessarily saying that that's a bad place. All I'm trying to emphasize here is that there's the phrase for public choice theory. It's politics without the romance. That was another phrase that was used. It's just the idea that we shouldn't necessarily read into politicians and public servants that they are somehow seeking out the best interests. Oftentimes they are completely and voters are too. So,
sir,
yes.
Service.
Lip service, yes. Well, lip service is going towards the, the platitudes of, yes, we need to have a strong Philippine economy. The Philippine, all these things. I'm not going to use Philippines or America. Let's make America great again. There's the MAGA one, right? Let's make America great again. These are the kinds of things that mask other incentives to perhaps stop immigrants from moving up, to preserve the place of a growing minority in the United States of middle-class white people who feel threatened by new people coming onto the scene. That's all going on underneath. And things like lip service, make America great again, that's powerful, but it's complete. Trump does not want to make America great again. There's no way. He wants to make America better for certain people. That's what he wants to do. So But I want to make sure that we get this concept down here. As you can see, the public choice theory and collective action challenges. Public choice theory is the greater concept, and then collective action is a concept within the public choice theory. Public choice theorists use collective action thinking, and we'll get to collective action in a minute, to understand better how voters and governments and people interact. And then it comes down to something that just really blew my mind when I learned about it 10 years ago, is the rational voter dilemma, which it makes you really, really wonder. But anyhow, let's continue. All right. Here I have 3 pictures. One of them is from my house a couple nights ago. The other 2 I pulled off the internet. Sorry, I didn't give attribution. But can somebody try to explain to me how each of these represent a collective action problem? I think for the most part, they're self-explanatory. The one with the money, let's just assume that's a corrupt organization. Okay, that's doing really well in terms of collecting bribes. Maybe this is, let's say this is, I'm not going to say it's the Philippines. Imagine this is a customs office, a customs agency somewhere in some country where it's very corrupt, where a lot of expensive stuff is coming in. All right, so can someone explain to me collective action having these 3 pictures as prompts? You know, I've heard a lot from Maria and I really appreciate her input, but I would really love to hear some more from others. Okay, we can start thinking of it this way, perhaps. Collective action could mean non-action. It could mean too much action. And it can mean throwing out the concept of morality. Each of these situations, I'll say it again, not enough action, too much action, and throwing away moral thinking is associated at times with collective action. Now, can someone connect these 3 pictures to those three principles I just gave? And I'd rather have Maria not talk, and I'd like to hear from Hannah or from Mila, Princess. I think anyone who's had roommates can appreciate the first one.
Prof,
Yeah,
if I may.
Hannah, go ahead.
From the first picture, as you said, if you have a roommate, of course, it would be very helpful if both of you would wash the dishes, but because different interests, individual interests, as well as the other pictures, fishing, there are a lot of individuals fishing, and there's too much of it, but collectively it does not support what we, from my perspective, collective action, as they said, is that is it situations where all individuals would be better off cooperating, or but by virtue of the conflicting interest, they were not able to do so.
There you
So
go.
definitely what would happen is that the optimum consideration for these individuals are their own interests, or their what they can profit on to something, onto such situation.
Hannah, that's very good. Can anyone amplify anything she said? Or is that the final say here? Is anyone prompted by Hannah's insights?
Prof, I'd like to try.
Sure, Mila.
Okay, so in the pictures, Prof, in the first picture, as you mentioned already, there are three different situations. The first one is for the non-action because of the collection or a grouping of the plates or for washing. The second one is
Well, wait a second. I'm trying to understand. What do you mean? Is that inaction or action?
inaction, Prof.
Right. And why is there inaction there?
The plates were collected for all lumped up together.
Yes, but essentially, what's the underlying thing that's stopping anyone from cleaning those plates?
Um,
Come on, we've all been there. Why should I clean everyone else's plate, right? I'm just going to leave my own thing. No one else cleans. Why should I be the person who cleans? I'm not going to be the sucker. Why do I do it? You know, that's there. It happens in offices sometimes. You don't have a cleaning person coming every night. It can be a disaster, right? So, and that sometimes is a solution, outsourcing it. So here, you guys, anyone who basically cleans up feels like all the benefits of cleaning up go to everybody else, and he or she is the one who did all the work. So as a result, you get less work done. That's why sometimes public parks are a disaster. You know, people litter. I don't want to go to over that can over there, and the can's full. I don't want to go to the next one. There's another one that's not so full. So they just kind of put it next to a tree and kind of walk away. But if everybody's doing that, you get a really bad looking park or a beach. Happens. There's a lot of beaches in Indonesia that are very dirty right now, unfortunately. So small actions by everybody or small inactions by everybody leads to something unfortunate, which are the dishes in my sink a few days ago. Fortunately, my wife makes me do all the dishes and she does all the cooking, so it works. We're okay. We have an equilibrium that works, and she yells at me if I don't do the dishes. So, and I like doing dishes. So that's that one. The fishing one that Hannah talked about, anyone want to amplify that? There's another phrase that sometimes is used called tragedy of the commons. Has anyone ever heard about that term? The commons. I don't have a picture here, but it used to be in some New England towns, they would have a town square in the middle, nice grass, and guess what they put out there? The cows and the sheep. And everyone would share the square where all the cows and the sheep would eat. But the problem is, within a short period of time, because they're sharing, all the grass gets eaten because everyone goes out there and basically eats up what you can. And that's the same thing that's going on here. There's no sustainable method for fishing. They've put fish into the pond, but they're saying, hey, go at it. And within a day or two, all the fish are gone, rather than trying to create a licensing system or some process to rotate that in. And overfishing these days is a massive problem for the world. We can't get fish anymore because there's too many fish out there. Sorry, fishing boats out there going up against a common thing. That is the tragedy of the commons. It's a collective action problem. That's why we're trying to do things like exclusionary zones for fishing rights. And some people say we should actually divide up the world's oceans and like sell the ocean spots. And people make money like that and have that money go towards some sort of fund. That's what, those concepts are. But right now, the oceans are a huge, massive sink. And we are either throwing stuff into it or we're pulling stuff out of it too fast. And that's all a collective action problem, or as I said before, a tragedy of the commons. Okay, the last one. This is not necessarily, there's action in action, but there's something else going on with the raining dollars or raining money. And this goes towards last month's class where we talked about a bit of how companies, or not companies, agencies can either deter or encourage corruption. And what's going on here? How does this relate to, as I said, one of them's inaction, one of them's too much action, and one is the moral side of what you're doing. Princess, you've been very quiet. Are you? And it seems like it's a little warm in your office. I saw you wiping your brow. Are you at the office or something today? It looks like an office
Yes,
there.
Prof. Yes, sir. Yes,
Okay.
Prof. I'm on Saturday duty.
Oh no. Okay. At least you're getting paid for it. All right. So, you're at the office right now. There's no money falling from the sky as far as I can tell there. But can you try to guess what I'm trying to get at here? Maybe hopefully no one's around to listen to you.
I think giving of incentives affects the collective behavior of individuals, or it affects the results from the behavior of this group of individuals.
Okay, that's all right. I think I want to get more at the notion of maybe think back when your parents were younger and everyone was smoking cigarettes. Or Lord, let's not go down that route. That's not a good one. So money's okay. Let's imagine there's money. Money goes out the window someplace. This is like almost a Hollywood thing. Money comes out, flows out a window, and everyone starts grabbing for it. Yes, Maria.
Sir, the officials turn a blind eye
Yes,
when
but
there are corrupt practices being done.
okay, Maria, yes, you did get it. That is good. Essentially, if everyone is doing the wrong thing, if everyone's grabbing the money, why should I not? That's what was talked about in the last month class where we talked about a culture of corruption. You're the sucker. If you're not getting out there and collecting money, you're just as much a sucker as the person who's doing the dishes. You're just as much a sucker as the person who says, I don't want to go fishing. It really is not a good idea, but then you don't get your fish, right? So same thing here. Oh, you see your friends collecting money, sending their kids to a really good school. Your kid has to go to a bad school because you're being honest. Very bad. Very hard to stop that. So what I'm trying to say here is collective action can have these effects, and it could be very powerful. Okay. And this is where we get to the rational voter dilemma, but we're going to talk about that for our last section. Okay. So let's take our 10-minute break. We can even do, let's do 10 minutes. So 4:31. We'll all see each other back here. Okay. I'm going to drink some water and then we'll continue. Thanks. Hi, everyone. It's around 10 minutes in. Okay, we got Maria back, Princess, Hannah, and Mila. Love it. Thank you so much. So now we're getting to this thing about when I first heard about this, it made me very depressed. And it still depresses me a little bit. But I would like to start off here, first of all, who voted in their last presidential election? I'm going to raise my hand. I voted in mine. Did everyone vote? Or I saw one person vote. Princess voted. Maria, Hannah voted. Sorry, I don't think Hannah has not raised her hand yet. If you haven't, it's okay. It makes a lot of sense. Why people vote, don't vote. What do you think? Why do you vote? I'd love to hear someone explain why they vote.
Prof,
Yes, Princess.
what's the
your
question?
office.
Why people vote?
Why would you vote? Did you vote in the last presidential election?
Yes, yes.
Okay, and why did you?
Because I think it's our responsibility to participate in the elections, and I think it's a way of voicing out our opinions by
Mhm.
voting. So I think it is yeah, it is.
It's a duty
That's why
thing.
I voted. Yes.
Maybe there's a bit of a duty thing. I got you on that. That's good. Did your vote make a difference?
Ah. Is the question did the one I voted for won?
No.
It did
Was the difference in the voting between number 1 and number 2 one vote?
no.
No.
But yeah. It did not, I think in a general sense that it did not make a um great impact, but I think by simply voting it um it is like a sense of fulfillment on my part by having participated and having voiced out my opinion. So
Okay.
yeah.
That's good. Now I agree with everything you're saying. But you may have seen a little bit in some of the work some of the materials. What would a real public choice person think about this? Public choice theorist. What does a public choice theorist think about? If you were to adopt the public choice theory as your way to move forward, what happens on election day? I mean, okay, let's say this. How long does it take you to go vote? I mean, is it hard to vote? For me, I have to mail something to the United States. It's hard, to tell you the truth. It's a lot of work, what I have to do. I got to mail something to the United States. I got to get something back. I'm not sure how it's going to happen. I got to stick one ballot inside another envelope, and I got to close it and sign across the envelope. It's hard to do. And sometimes the embassy helps a bit. You can put that at the U.S. Embassy box and they'll send it out. But there's no online voting. My wife can do online voting for Indonesia. Show your ID, you go to the embassy, you do an online vote. Very nice. How hard is it in the Philippines? Anyone?
I think
Princess?
Prof, I think sorry.
Go ahead, please.
Okay. I think it differs where you are voting. As for me, I voted in the province. So I
Mhm.
think it's easier, or in our province it was easier than those who voted here in Manila, where
Mm,
there were longer lines, or they
mm.
cannot find their um precincts,
Right.
or yeah.
Okay, gotcha on that. Were people waiting in line long periods?
In our case, there's no queue, or the lines would be only from 7 up during the first few hours of the opening of the ballot centers, or
Okay.
I mean the voting centers.
Right.
But after that, so you can vote anytime,
Okay.
or before closing.
How's everyone else's experience in that? Go ahead, Maria. I can't hear you.
I also fall in line, but since my mother is a senior citizen, I was the one assisting her. So we
Okay.
go early,
Hmm.
and it's a bit easier for me.
Easier. Okay, that's good to know. How about when you were making your decision, how much studying did you do about the candidates? All right, let's even say better. Let's not just think about Bong Bong versus whoever. I can't remember who was. Oh, it was that lady, Laredo. She was very much a favorite for certain people. What's her name? Lenny? What was her name? Someone help me with that. I can't hear anyone. Help out this.
Lenny Robredo.
Lenny Robredo, Prof.
Lenny Robredo. Okay, there you go. I know she was a favorite for certain people. But how about the Senate? How does the Senate work? And how'd you choose your senators? This is tough. If you go voting, and then you got to decide how to vote for your senator. How many senators do you get to vote for? Just one? Or do you get to vote for like 10? I can't hear you, Maria.
12. 12,
You-
sir.
You get to actually choose
12.
12? You get to check 12
Yeah.
names? Oh my
Yes.
gosh. So you do
Shade.
people do
Who is the
research on the
oval?
12? Do people look at their 12
No.
people and, do the research on each of them and figures out which one's the right one? Maria, you're
Not
muting
really,
yourself.
not
Go ahead.
really research, sir, because we already know them.
Mm,
And sometimes they go for re-election, so they are the same names actually.
right.
Yeah,
Okay.
but the one that I voted was didn't win.
Mm, okay.
Diokno.
Okay. All right. So what I'm getting at here is this notion that from a collective, not a collective, essentially a public choice perspective, you can't make your vote, the chance of your vote making a difference in an election is 1,000,000,000 to 1. It just is not going to happen. What you do is completely symbolic. You're not going to make a difference from an individual perspective. And some people would say, well, I got to take care of my sick mom, or I got to, make more money. Why should I take 2 hours out of my day? That's 2 hours I could be doing the dishes at home. So the question really becomes, why do you vote? Because in many ways, according to public choice theorists, which maybe it sort of breaks down a little bit, it makes no sense to vote. And that's a horrible, horrible result because, our democracy, that means basically we're might as just let a dictator take over. And, it's the thing that pulls the public choice people out of this morass is that they say, well, okay, people think about their duty. It makes them feel good. Or as it's described here with the San Badens holding the net that they just cut down, it's kind of like you're rooting for a team, right? We hate Trump, so we're really hoping that he gets, we gets voted out of office, and we'd love to see him humbled. Or we like the Marcoses for a long time, and it's great to see the dynasty come back and Bong Bong back in power. Or Lenny has been a champion for women's rights all this time. I'd love to see her become, the president. So and you're voting for her or him gives you that feeling, sort of like watching as they, I didn't quote, it's watching your own team do well. So it's frustrating in the sense that people elect, basically, as I'm going to now switch to the next slide. Oops, hang on. Voters. Here's the slides again about voters are unfortunately horrible principals. They're really bad. I mean, and that is one of our big problems. We got some good principals up there and we got some bad ones. And voters are not great. They're not necessarily great at policing the actions of their principals. And that's a challenge democracy is having right now. It is truly, truly a world crisis. And, even in the United States, which is supposed to be like the pillar of democracy, we're going through this right now, and it's heartbreaking, absolutely heartbreaking. Some people just may not vote at all, and Trump will get in. And we really can't survive the world can't survive another 4 years of Trump. Sorry to be partisan on that, but it's almost everyone agrees with that, except for a small group of people. Even a lot of most Republicans will say the same thing. So in my table here, which you'll get at the end here, possible agent as elected officials, definitely complexity is high. With you guys, you have 12 different senators to evaluate. Me, I have, well, should there be a war in, should we use, different types of ways for climate control, or, do we go the high regulatory side, the way the Biden wants to do things? Do we lower taxes the way the Republicans want to do things? Do we worry about the budget? Do we worry about what happens in Europe with Ukraine? Very complicated things. I don't know the answers, so that's the things that make it much harder to be a good principal. And then the capacity, I am right now a political junkie. That's where I am right now. I wasn't before. I was very apathetic. But these days I read Twitter, I read the news, I'm watching everything about Trump. Trump radicalized me. He really did. It became, when he won, I couldn't believe it. My level of involvement in politics went way, way up. But there's a lot of people who just don't care. Just last week, I don't know if you guys knew it, but maybe I'm talking too much about America, but maybe I can, if you can bear with me here. There was a Trump-Biden debate about last week, and it was at 8 o'clock in the morning, and I was in Indonesia. I woke up early to actually, we had a big night the night before, and so I was a little groggy, but I woke up because I needed to see this. And Trump walked out, and then Biden walked out, and Biden started talking, and within 10 minutes, I turned it off, and I went back to bed, and I was about as depressed as I felt since Trump won. That's probably, and the worst, and that was the time when I was more depressed than that was 9/11. So these are the things that really got me depressed. And because I thought now Trump is going to win. But I'm only saying this because very few people cared. The big thing afterwards was nobody was watching. It's only people like you, Dan, who is a political junkie right now, who really watches. Okay? Nobody cares. So what I'm trying to say here, there's two things going on. The capacity to think about these things and both the incentives to actually do a good job. They're mixed. There's some people who don't care about this at all. There's huge amounts of voters that just don't know anything, but they vote anyhow. And that can be a problem. So, and you get this, and this is why sometimes you have rallies where there's, entertainment going on. We've seen that. People dancing, singers, right? That's what or in the Philippines, people people get dropped off at their houses. Sorry, not in Indonesia. I don't know if this happens in the Philippines, but we know this happens in Indonesia. People get oil, like, cooking oil, and a couple of, I don't think there's bread, but definitely cooking oil and rice. People get cooking oil and rice delivered to their houses, and it's from so-and-so organization supporting so-and-so there. And, some people say, at least you're getting that, Other people say that's terrible, but some people say, at least they're getting that. And they don't necessarily have to vote for the person, but that's what goes on. So sometimes they're buying votes, and this is a challenge. And I don't necessarily have an answer here. And where I'm coming from right now is to say it's as much a governance problem as it is a corruption problem. It's hard to separate the whole process out, whether you're just making good choices or bad choices or corrupt choices. This problem of voters being poorly performing principals is a real challenge we have both in the Philippines, in Indonesia, and in the United States, to say the least. So that's where we are with the table of potential performance of principals. And this is where the quote that Maria almost predicted. This guy was a French guy during the French Revolution. He was born in, I got something like 1753, and then he lived through the big crazy revolution in France. And basically, he's very cynical, and he said, in a democracy, people get the leaders they deserve. And, he's been dead a long time. He hasn't seen what we've seen, but there is something to be said about that. Okay. It's very cynical. But sometimes economics is sometimes described as the dismal science, because if you follow it all the way to the end, you'll get depressed. So I'm trying not to get you guys depressed here. There's some hope, I think. There's some real hope. And let's just talk about that a little bit, and we'll talk about this more next month. Okay. So the next slide I have here is enablers and frustrators. I mentioned before in this table that, like, shareholders have, various advisors, et cetera, that help them decide whether to buy shares or not in certain companies, or to figure out whether there's good corporate governance in a particular company. These days, you're getting a lot more of that. There's so much more information available to voters that they used to have to pay for. And we're much, much more, a lot of us are much, much more aware than we could ever be. I certainly could not be as aware as I am right now if I was living here in Indonesia and I was getting the Herald Tribune every day. That's like the New York Times that's delivered internationally. That costs like $500 a year, at least $1 a day to get that newspaper. That's really expensive. Instead, I can get just as much information now by reading Twitter or New York Times Online. I pay a couple of dollars a month. I have so much more information. So the media is helping. We have so much more information than we used to. And then things like Facebook, we can organize. I could find out information. I could organize how to vote collectively, how to get our votes to the U.S. Embassy somehow to get those in the ballot box. We could have those kinds of things happen. We can organize a lot easier than we used to. And then we have, you can see at the bottom here, civil society. And we do have organizations. And the Philippines, I think, is great in this area. You guys have the best civil society I've ever seen, that I've ever worked with. It really gives you an opportunity to do stuff. Sometimes they turn into donor babies a little bit, but for the most part, they're trying hard, and they seem like, at least the good ones, are doing good stuff. But then for everything good I said here, there's also bad. sometimes we get misinformation. Facebook in 2016 was turned into this system by the Russians to give bad information, to get people cynical. And, people start not reading broadly. They start reading their own stuff. And that's, they go down they describe the rabbit hole, to use a metaphor from Alice in Wonderland. And they go into a world that makes no sense. And even though they have plenty of information out there, they just focus on what makes them feel good. And that's what's going on with the MAGAs. And the MAGAs do that for each other. The Make America Great Again group, that group, and that method, that how should I say, that movement is like civil society. It uses Facebook. It used the various types of media, and it got this guy back again. There's the whole U.S. primary system thing that has an effect on it, but he's back because people have been listening to what he's saying and not listening to others. So I guess what I'm trying to say here when I say it's enablers and frustrators, it's both good and bad. We have so much more information, but the information is going sometimes in the wrong direction. Okay, then there's something else that I want to talk about, and maybe we can even get done early today, but I wanted to show you this, and I wish we had a class together for something like this. Can somebody see what? Okay, let's imagine here. Can everyone see the 100,000 rupiah bill in the first left-hand corner? I can see it. Everyone can see it. That red bill. Yes. There's a hat and there's 100,000. Now, that's not that much money in Philippine pesos. That's the equivalent of 100,000 is equivalent to, unfortunately, like $3 or $6. Okay. That's a $6 thing right there. I'm not going to try to figure out what it is in pesos. It's $6. Now, let's imagine we have a game. I would like to have done it. I would like to have done this with you, but I can't. Let's imagine a game where I say, I'm going to auction off this 100,000 rupiah note, and the opening bid is 5,000. Okay? You put it in the hat, but once you put it in the hat, it doesn't come out. I keep it. That's the rule for my thing. That's my auction. It's a no money back auction. Normally in auctions, you raise your hand. I didn't win, so I don't lose any money. But here, we're doing an auction where you put your money in and you don't get it back. But I'm starting at a really low price, 5,000. Who would put their money in? Would you? Who would put their money in? 5,000, you get, that's a 20 times profit if no one else bids for it. So let's just imagine we're in the classroom at San Beda right now. I'm walking around. I have the 100,000 in my hand and I have a hat. Do you put the money in? And I have my son tracking who's putting how much in. Does anyone put 5,000 in? Or 1,000? That's a coin. There's 500. Would you do it? That's, 500 rupiah is like, oh my gosh, it's like 2 cents, 2 US cents or something like that. So would you do it? Why are people hesitant to say yes? Maybe you're not getting it. I mean, let's get it clear here. Let's imagine there's the hat, there's the 100,000, the 500 goes in, somebody has done it, and a bunch of people have done it. Okay? You haven't done it yet, I guess. But what's going on with this? Do you or do you not? Or you don't, you maybe, but the fact that you're not saying anything says to me you stay on the sidelines. But somebody would do it, and they may walk away with 5,000. They may walk away with 100 for 5,000. What's holding you back? Because it's also new. No one's ever really probably put this little thought experiment in front of you before. Maria,
Sir, I will not put my money there
why?
because what is it in for me? What will I
You get the
get?
money. You win it. Once
I will win the
okay, just get it
money.
clear. I'm sorry. You're putting the money
Okay.
in, and then after
Mhm.
5, let's say after 1 minute where nobody says
Mhm.
anything, the person who's put the
Mhm.
most money in gets it. Gets the 100,000, not the money that's in the hat.
Mm.
I keep the money that's in the hat.
Mhm.
That's my
Mhm.
money. Goes in the hat, doesn't come out.
Mhm.
So that's the rule.
Mhm.
Maybe I wasn't making the rule clear.
Mhm.
We're auctioning off 100,000 and the opening price is 5,000. That sounds like a good
Mhm.
deal, especially after 1 minute or
Mhm.
whatever the rule is. Nobody else
Mhm.
bids. What do you want? What? Yes, let's hear it from Mila. What do you do?
Prof, I would not put the 5,000 pesos because to me it would not be sure if I would be getting
No,
the
you're right.
100,000
Yeah.
rupiah because my other classmates might put a bigger amount.
Mm-hmm.
There's something holding me back. And
Mm-hmm.
then, as I said earlier, I won't be able to get the money I already placed there because it
Correct.
already belongs to you.
Correct. Do you know anyone who would go for this though? Maybe you guys wouldn't, but do you know any friends who might try?
The monopolist.
No monopoly, no monopolist here. Let's not go down that route. Let's think about, we have some people out there who are, more bold with money, maybe. Sure, they may want to try to do this. And there's
Sir,
been experiments. There have been experiments about doing this where professors have done this in a room. I've done it in a room in the Philippines. And I don't want to tell you what the results were. I want you guys to think about what the results might have been before I tell you the results.
sir, a gambler.
Okay, good. That's not a person who wants to take a little risk to make some money. Absolutely. That's part of the deal here. You're taking a bit of a risk. And let's imagine we do this twice. And I'm walking around the class, and the only one who puts money in is Maria. And she puts in a 5, and she gets 100. And she's happy. That's a pretty good deal. She got it. How about the next time? Would you do it then? Let Maria take it again? Maria throws in the next 5. I'm going to make 200,000.
Yeah.
What happens? Are you going to stop her?
More people will join.
You think so? Would anyone here join? Maria's making, for 10,000, she's made 20,000 if no one else goes. I can understand the first time, but not the second time. Isn't someone willing to try to stop Maria from getting that next 100,000? So,
Sir,
okay,
we are not gamblers.
Maria's gonna get 200,000. It looks like Maria's just got 200,000. All right. I think if actually was here, maybe that's what would happen. And Maria's walking out with 100,000. You guys have not risked anything. That's totally okay. In fact, it might make a lot of sense. And let me explain why. I did it in my class, and I think we had a couple of gung-ho types, some guys who were maybe prosecutors, and they were, thought very good about themselves and thought they were very savvy. And so we started it, and people started putting money in, and I kept track of who's putting the money in. And guess what happened? as we got to, some people had put in 80,000 each. What happens at that point? You've put in, so let's imagine Maria's put in 80,000 and Hannah has now put in 80,000 because she finally realized, I want this money. So she knows she's put in 80,000. And Hannah and Maria is putting in, because she's played it already before, she's put in 80,000 now. What do you do next? What do you do, Hannah? What do you do, Maria, at this point?
I'll give more, so I'll win it.
You'll get more. Okay, so you put in 90. Okay, and you're going to make a 10% profit. That's not bad. Hannah, what do you do? You're not going to get that money back unless you win.
Unless I put on higher amount.
I think so. So what do you do? Maybe you do 90, 95?
Yeah, 95 or just a conservative.
Well, you got to
amount.
do, she did 90. What do you do? You're losing 80 if you don't do 91.
Maybe but if I put in 100, I will not get anything. So
You
maybe
wait a second. You put in
95.
100, you won't get anything, but you won't lose anything either. Right? You've already put in 80. So what do you do?
Break even.
Well, breaking even's not a bad thing. So okay, so what are you going to do, Hannah? You're at 80, she's at 90. What do you do?
Probably
You
I'm
need
not a
that, you
gambler.
need that 80 to get home tonight. What do you do? Can't hear you.
I'll give I'm not good at this gambling thing
It's
or
okay.
whatever.
Well, I advise you
Like
to
that.
give 91.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe, yes.
And then what do you do, Maria?
I'll give 91 and 91,500.
Okay, so this goes up. So it keeps going, right? We keep going. And now we're at 99. Right? We each went up a little bit, thinking the other person's going to stop, but it's still going. What do you do next? Does it make sense to spend more than 100? No? You sure about that? It doesn't make sense. Let's just imagine I'm in there, I'm playing, and I say, okay, I'm going to bid 101. I was in there too. I had bid 40. And I stopped for a while. Then I bid 101. Okay, now I'm in there. I'm saying, if I bid 101 and I win, I just lose 1. If I don't bid, I lose 40. That's rational. That makes complete economic sense for me to bid the 101. What do you guys do? You're each going to lose 99. You're going to let that happen? Remember, I'm not, let's just bet. Maybe I'm organizing the hat, or my son is organizing the hat, and now I'm playing, okay? I'm separate. I have no inside deal, okay? I bid 40. Now I go up to 101. And I say, I don't mind losing 1 because that's a heck of a lot better than losing 40. What do you guys do? What's rational? Can't hear you.
Maybe I'll bid more a little, so I
little.
can get my money back.
Right.
I
Okay.
just want to get my money back.
Okay, I totally appreciate that. I totally get that. And this has been done in classes in America and elsewhere where somebody puts down a $20 bill and people are auctioning, people pay $30 for a $20 bill in the end. It's been done. It's documented. And it makes no sense at all. And maybe you should have, maybe your reluctance at the beginning is part of the reason why you don't participate. But there's some people who did. And some people early on, like on the first round, made lots of money. So why am I talking about this other than to make you guys think a little bit? Why did I even bring this up? And I think Saul Levmore talked about it.
Pay all
Maria?
auction.
It's a
Pay all
pay,
auction?
yeah, it is a pay all auction. And what was he comparing the pay all auction to?
The lobby money
Lobby
to the
money.
politicians.
Absolutely. Lobby money, campaign money, election money. In Saul Levmore's mind, and this sounds very cynical, but this I just showed you is an election where, assuming that you can turn money into votes, or this is a lobbying thing where you can turn your money into, you know, some sort of public campaign, blah, blah, blah. You are putting money in. And once you put the money in, you've paid for that advertising thing, you can't get it back. So you better win in order to get your back whatever you did in the first place. Whatever made you do it in the first place. So what I'm trying to say here, and this is part of what I was talking about, information and too much information. This system where we have this pay-all auction is why we get almost too much information out there, to the point where it's terribly wasteful, to the point where it starts swamping everyone's ability to think about who's the right candidate or what's the right choice. And in America, what makes this even harder is we have what you call the First Amendment, and it's very hard to put restrictions on this because they'll say, oh, political speech, it needs to be protected. And this has become a bigger and bigger problem over time. So that's why I brought that up here. And that's why I have the picture of a US convention where they're getting together in the middle of a big political thing. The pictures are Obama, but there's other people challenging him. Lots of money was at stake, and Obama won. The money went towards, enough money went towards Obama, but huge amounts, and they can't get it back. So that's what creates this thing. And that kind of money is what fuels the corruption. People have incredible incentives to win under these types of games because they've already put the money in and they need something back, and they need an answer. They need a result that really matters to them. So there are people who are really wanting a result. And it becomes, if you don't have good rules, it's possible that they will pay a politician directly. And then sometimes it's called lobbying. Okay? And that's, or a campaign. And that's a problem. So I've been very, very, maybe this is making us all a little sad. We only have 10 minutes left. But I just wanted to say here that while these problems are getting worse and worse, and we have this political system thing that has gotten us, that now we understand a little bit about why this happens, at least we have something that is good, and that is transparency. It used to be transparency was expensive. Transparency now is super, super cheap. Think about one of the things that was a big breakthrough in the Philippines and in Indonesia about 15 years ago was that they never published the decisions of the lower courts. There was only the upper court decisions. We're all lawyers. We know about these things. Published decisions up and down the system is a very great thing in the United States. We would have libraries of published decisions, huge numbers, and you could find answers to almost everything so long as you were able to look it up. But that system was so expensive that very few very few countries could have it. And in the United States, it was kind of localized because every state is different. And you'd have, okay, let's just look at Vermont law, look at California law. California's a big place. Or let's look at Wyoming law. Then at least you could have it somewhat compartmentalized. And even back before we had the internet, et cetera, you could do it. Okay? Nowadays, it's easy to publish every decision. And, you know, I know the Philippines has expanded what they now publish. I believe the courts of appeals are now published decisions. 15 years ago, I remember Justice Sereno was talking about trying to make this happen. So now I'm sure now you can get decisions of the Court of Appeals. That's more information. That's more transparency. I know there's been every agency now has websites, and there's ways that they put out regulations ahead of time, and you can sort of comment on things. I don't know if it's yet here, but there was an effort in the Philippines to have something called the Freedom of Information Act. As that happened, probably, I think I would have heard about it if it got passed, but there was an effort to get something called the Freedom of Information Act, where people could get information from things. But what I guess I want to ask here is, can someone else give me a couple of examples of how transparency is at least making it a little bit better? And I know at least one really good one in the Philippines that I love, and I wish the United States actually had it, and I don't think we do. And what is that transparency method? And it has to do with money. And it doesn't mean you necessarily do something bad, but you have to do something every year if you're a government official. Certain government officials.
Filing of
Go
filing
ahead.
of
Sorry,
SALN.
Princess. Let's hear it. What?
Prof, filing of SALN, statements of assets and
SALNs.
liability.
Bravo. Yes. The sounds. That is an amazing way to how should I say, monitor and enforce anti-corruption efforts if you really use it. You know, people don't make that much money if you're government officials. You don't. It's, you know, the salaries are relatively low. If you start filing sounds every year and you go from X to, you know, 5 or 10 times the amount, there's some issues there. And then they try to hide it, and then they get caught for hiding it. And actually that's an offense. And that's, you know, it works. I know it doesn't work perfectly. And in the United States, it doesn't work perfectly either. It should work better. But that's a classic example of how greater transparency can be used to fight against corruption. Is there any other ones? How about this was coming up in Russia and a couple of other places, in Georgia. What about NGOs? Do they have to disclose who their donors are? My thinking in the Philippines, you don't have to. Right. In the United States, NGOs need to say who they're getting their money from, especially if it's foreign people. And then Russia did it, and people in Russia got very scared because they thought they would be persecuted if they had American or, you know, European money behind them. And then that happened in Georgia, and there was huge protests in Georgia against this. But then people said, you know, you're just asking. The government is just asking what everyone else does in every other country. So I guess what I'm trying to say here is sometimes these NGOs that don't like to have to share where they're getting their money from because that's maybe bad, you know, oh, you're just, you know, you're an agent of America. Oh, the Europeans are telling you what to do. Well, you know, maybe want to know what the Chinese are doing, right? So the idea of maybe transparency is a good thing so long it's not necessarily abused. And that kind of transparency is an important thing because, you know, look what happened with, as I said, with MAGA and with Russia and Facebook. There was a lot of work being done under the cover that we didn't know who was doing it. And more transparency there is a very, very good thing.
Prof,
Another-
another one,
Go ahead. Yeah, Hannah.
the public procurement processes in place.
Okay, let's hear it. What do
In
you
the
mean?
Philippines, we have a law, certainly in 9184 for the procurement of government of with respect to projects and all
Mhm.
that, in a way
Mhm.
to combat corruption and to
Right.
instill transparency
Okay.
frameworks.
They used to put that in the newspaper, right? Where do they put it now?
Prof?
Yes, where do they put it? They used to put those in the newspapers, right?
Yes, Prof.
They still put them in the
But-
newspapers?
I think so, Prof. I am not updated with the current.
Okay. Right. Well, you know, I remember that the newspapers were being used to give the notice, right? And no one wanted to change it to the internet. So, but now people don't have online access. They don't have online access. It's wrong. We can't do that. We'll cut off people's rights if we stop putting notices in the newspapers. But some of these newspapers actually didn't exist except for the notices, right? And so there was probably some corruption going on there where the newspapers were paying the government officials to keep the old rule going. So, you know, it's hard for things to change, but eventually I haven't looked at this issue in the Philippines in a long time, but I hope that they've moved more because everybody is now online. Everyone has a phone, and that phone means access online, and it's usually for free. Another big one that you probably don't appreciate, but is becoming bigger and bigger is who owns these companies? This is a really, you know, for the most part in the United States, you can't figure out who are the owners of particular companies, but that's going to change. Everyone's moving towards this concept of shareholder ownership should be known, because you want to see who's owning what and who's owning, you know, maybe 5 companies, or one company owns at the top, it owns another company, and this kind of stuff is been used to create a lot of fraud and a lot of how should I say, money laundering. Money gets disappeared, ends up in London. You buy how they take money and pull it out of certain countries and they drop it in London, and they have a system of confidentiality in London and Singapore that allows for this money to get laundered. And they're also trying to stop that. And that's another example of transparency. And that is good. It's going to cause some people to be upset. And it means a little bit, maybe I have this silly company in the United States that has done nothing. It's in Delaware, and I was going to make a consulting company out of it. Now I might have to file another extra piece of paper saying Dan Fitzpatrick is the owner, but I have no problem doing that because I understand that this kind of transparency of ownership of companies is very, very important. Granted, you know, a company like San Miguel has thousands and thousands of owners, and they can do things to make that more transparent and meaningful. And it's not a perfect system, but it's certainly a step in the right direction. So that's why transparency, and when you have an opportunity to increase transparency, even if it's a completely different way of thinking about things, like say moving from newspapers to the internet with regard to public notices, it's really, really an important part of the battle. If basically, if you have transparency and you don't have what they have in Russia now, which is, you know, like, or Iran or North Korea, where if you say something, you get put in jail. Maybe this guy is right. If you have transparency and you're not totally repressive, if people aren't doing stuff to protect themselves when the information is out there, when people can organize to get that information to those who want, maybe we do get the leaders that we deserve. So to a certain extent, this almost sounds like a governance thing, but at this level, governance and corruption are really two sides of the same coin. So let me finish with a few conclusions, and then we can call it a day. And I'll just read them, and I think it's pretty, I'll send this to you as well. Please don't turn off your mind yet. Principal and agent concepts, even though I didn't talk about it last time, they matter. And unfortunately, voter performance is not great. And it's affected by, if you start thinking about voter performance through the lens of public choice theory and collective action, you can understand that. I'm not trying to make you depressed. I'm just trying to inform you so that maybe you can inspire other voters to think more about these issues. And various institutions. MAGA is a bad one. Maybe Facebook is a good one. Maybe sometimes it's a bad one. Maybe some of your best friends' NGO that she works for, he works for, is a great one. And then finally, transparency. The sound, as Hannah mentioned, a wonderful thing. Something we should be using more in the United States to go after corrupt officials, because it's amazing how rich some of these people have gotten. And they say things like, I did really well in the stock market. Yeah, well, show us how you did well in the stock market. So those are the kinds of things. So I think we can stop now. It's been a long day. I think I threw a lot at you. But let me just say here at the end, I appreciate your patience, especially from last time. And I think I owe Hannah. You said you need to see the notes or the recording because you didn't get it for some reason. We'll be in touch. We'll talk via text, and we'll figure that out. Thanks for being patient last time. I think this one flowed a lot better without these issues. Now, what I have to ask you, though, for the next time we meet, you need to, each of you is going to be asked to make a small presentation based on the video that you liked the best, okay? We have work to do. We'll be talking about countervailing things that will, not just democracy. Today was like how democracy can save a country. Well, okay, there's other ways to save a country, and we'll talk about those things. But at the same time, I want you guys to get more comfortable in this notion of speaking and giving some feedback from one of the videos you had, because one of our biggest things at the end is we're going to watch some videos. You haven't seen them yet. And videos that I saw early on that I said, this is good, but I want to save it because I want you guys to show me by acting as if it's we're in a panel. I want you guys to move from people who had no thoughts about this to being sophisticated thinkers about law and economics of corruption. And that's going to happen not next time, but I believe the time after that. There's a period of time where you're working on your papers, et cetera, where we're going to just have essentially a mini seminar. We have these famous people who are going to talk, and you guys are going to show how naive they are. I even think the guy from the IMF who spoke in this session, in one of the materials I gave you, to me, he sounded a bit naive. He was talking about Indonesia, blah, blah, blah. And I didn't think he actually knew I think all of you guys now know more than he does. And he works for the IMF. So I would like for you guys to be more comfortable in presenting so that when you're presenting again, when you're presenting your paper, when you're being part of the panel, you're ready to discuss. So that's what will be part of the process next time. So as much as it is looking at the videos, think about one of them that made sense to you and give us some feedback on it. Okay? It'll be short, but I just want to start that process. In some ways, next time we meet is a transition from me teaching the class to you guys teaching the class. And that will happen. Hopefully. Hopefully. And I don't get nervous about it. This is a positive environment, and it's a small environment. We all know each other. Let's move forward. And so one of the things we'll be doing is trying to come up with a presentation. I will think about how I might be able to help you frame it a little bit. I know it's what they have in the syllabus is a little bit bare bones. I will take it upon myself to see if I can give you a little bit more information on how to do it. And there'll be more information about the papers, et cetera, in the coming weeks as well. Okay. So that's it for today. You have a whole month before you have to think about me again. And enjoy the rest of your weekend. And try to stay dry with the monsoons. I know it can be tough.
Yes.
And enjoy the rest. It's only Saturday. You have all of Sunday tomorrow to relax. So take care. Thanks a lot. You guys were great today.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Prof.
Thank you, Prof.
Yes.
Prof.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Take care. Bye.